Hello, here's another one of my horror videos. I hope it's enjoyable. I haven't really got much to say. Oh yeah, I got like a question saying something about why these all my videos are named like around the world, horror stories from around the world. Basically, quite a lot of these horror stories I'm using are ones which I've translated over from different languages, so like stories you wouldn't be able to get hold of. Hence, I put like around the world. Oh, anyway, I hope you enjoy the story. There's like 4 this time. And again, if you have any tips or anything which you thought could be improved, just tell me on the comment section, and I'll try and do it as fast as possible. Thanks. Story 1. Good morning. One day I went to a friend's place. He lives near a shopping district and rents a room in a sort of communal apartment. The shared bathroom is on the first floor, and my friend's room is also on the first floor, farthest from the exit. We were hanging out in his room and drinking when I realised I needed to use the bathroom. Something about the bathroom was really creepy, so I kept looking around to make sure no one was watching me. I finished up, I left the bathroom when a young guy with a yellow hoodie came up to me out of nowhere. "Good morning!" he cried out in a somewhat disjointed manner. "Morning to you too," I said. And then I continued on my way back to my friend's room. My friend then decided to use the bathroom, and when he came back, he said the same thing happened to him. Some guy in a yellow hoodie said hello, and he returned the greeting. Not much later, I got tired and fell asleep. I don't know what time it was, but at some point my friend started yelling at me. "No way! Hey, wake up! You gotta see this!" He was watching the news. When I lifted my head up to see what was on the screen, I saw an old woman. Underneath her was a heading that read, "Slasher! People attacked in broad daylight." The woman began answering questions the reporting crew were asking. What she described made my blood run cold. He was pretty young and was wearing a yellow hooded sweatshirt, she said, apparently being a witness to one of the attacks. The report continued on with information from the police regarding the man's motive. Apparently, he had been stabbing people who didn't reply to his morning greetings. Story 2. The Fortune Teller. One night, a young man was walking around town. He had been drinking with his friends and was a little bit tipsy. His gaze wandered around as he made his way through the streets, and his eyes happened to fall upon a man sitting at a table. The man must have been around 50 years old, and he sat at a table reading a book. As the younger man stepped closer, he saw that there was a handwritten sign that read, "Fortune Teller," on the front of the table, and a crystal ball perched in front of the psychic. Half in curiosity and half in drunken jest, the young man sat opposite the fortune teller. "If I give you my little brother's information, think you could give his reading for me?" The fortune teller set down his book and nodded. He then asked for some basic information regarding the young man's brother. Name, age, birth date, and a few other basic things. The young man wanted to test the psychic. He didn't actually have a brother. He gave his own name and birth date, and he gave the age of 28 when in fact he was only 23. He barely repressed a smile as the diviner looked him in the eyes. "So your brother is 28 years old? And you gave me the correct name and birth date?" The young man nodded. And the fortune teller pressed his palm over the crystal ball. He seemed to be lost in concentration when suddenly his entire demeanour changed. The colour drained from his face, and he immediately took his hand away from the ball and instead began leafing through several of the books that were piled up on the table. He broke out in a cold sweat and glanced at the young man doubtfully. "I'm sorry, but is your brother in good health?" He's fine. Not that it's any of your business." The young man rolled his eyes, sure that the whole thing was a scam. "Please, tell him to take care of himself." He emphasized this several times before the young man began to grow fearful himself. He asked what was wrong, and the fortune teller gravely told him what the crystal ball had revealed. "According to what I saw, your brother should have died 5 years ago today." Story 3. Where? One night I woke up all of a sudden. I swear I could feel somebody in the room with me. I looked around and saw a faint light floating near the ceiling. I squinted my eyes to get a better look at the light, only to find it was a very pale woman's face. I immediately became scared and tried to run away, but my body wouldn't move. I tried to close my eyes to get the face out my vision, but I couldn't even do that. It was winter, and my apartment was freezing cold, but I was covered in sweat. The woman remained expressionless, flicking her eyes back and forth across my bedroom. The only positive I could see in the situation that I was in was that she wasn't looking at me. I watched her, and she continued looking around my room until her eyes suddenly settled on me. "Where?" she muttered. I didn't know what she was on about. She was obviously looking for something, but what? Was it in my room? I couldn't think of anything that she would want. I started to shake, and as the face watched me, it slowly got closer and closer. It only stopped when it was so close that I could feel her breath on my body. In a sudden panic, I screamed at her. "For God's sake, I don't have it, I tell you!" I don't really know what happened after that. When I woke up, it was morning. Even though I couldn't remember everything that had happened, I knew that it wasn't a dream. I was shaking and couldn't stop, so I went to my friend's Akiyoshi's. I wondered if I would be able to stay the night there, but even if that night I was safe, I would need to still go back to my home the next night, or the night after that. So, instead of burdening Akiyoshi, I asked him to come to my place. We ended up talking late into the night, but I couldn't fight off the fatigue I was feeling. Eventually, I lost the fight and fell asleep. It happened again. I got the distinct impression that I was being watched. My eyes flew open and darted around, looking for the face above me, but she wasn't there. In fact, she was right above Akiyoshi, staring intently at his face. Unlike me, he continued to sleep peacefully. I was shaking but couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene. She turned to me and slowly floated above my head until she was right in front of my face. No, not this one. Where? She wanted me to find something for her, obviously. But I didn't know what she was talking about. "I don't have it!" And again, I passed out. But Akiyoshi woke me up. I told him what I saw, but he laughed it off and told me it must have been a dream. But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. But I still didn't know what the woman was and what she wanted from me. My apartment doesn't have a lot of stuff in it, so I didn't know why she would be looking for something of mine. I asked Akiyoshi to stay the night again, but he had previous plans already and had to decline. I called another friend, Junji, and asked if he would come over. He agreed and brought some things to spend the night. But the results were the same. The woman appeared, floated above him for a short while, and then began speaking. "Not this one. Where?" "I don't have it!" I passed out again. The next day, I was even more fearful and decided to go to my friend Shinji's place. Maybe if I go to somewhere else, she won't bother me. Shinji didn't mind me staying at all, but the face followed me there. I woke up with her floating above his face before she turned to me again and said the same lines. "Not this one." "Where?" "I don't fucking know," I said, getting annoyed with her badgering me. It must have startled her or something, because suddenly the image of her face expanded and seemed to burst open before disappearing. Good, at least she was gone. I assumed that she had finally decided to leave me alone. I went back to my own apartment. Of course, that was foolish of me. She showed up above me again that night. Where? Unlike before, She looked mad as she spoke to me. It was almost like she was blaming me for something. "Where is he? You know where he is, don't you? So why don't you just tell me?" She seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. Who was she looking for? Was it somebody I knew about? I couldn't think of a single person she would be going after. Regardless, I started having different friends stay every night, as often as possible. None of them saw anything, and none of them sensed anything, but she still appeared every single night. Where? Where? Where is he? Every night. I thought I might go crazy. After several nights, my friend Hayato stayed over. Again, I woke up in the middle of the night to find the girl's face floating above my friend's face. I watched her, just like I always did, and she stared intently at Hayato's face. After a few moments, she made her way over to me. "You found him!" She smiled broadly at me. I don't know how to describe it, but something about it made me feel uneasy. "Ah!" I screamed. I was absolutely terrified. I ran to the door, out of the house, to outside. I didn't know where I was going, but I found myself at a friend's house who lived nearby. I told him everything that had happened, and he agreed to come to my apartment to check things out. When we opened the door, we discovered that Hayato was missing. I never heard anything from him after that. His parents questioned me several times, and I told them the truth. Judging by their reactions, they just thought I was mental. At one point, there were even rumours that I killed him and hid his body somewhere. Several of my friends, as a result, distanced themselves from me. I suppose it's probably my fault though. But I had no idea that things would turn out like this. I still don't even know how the woman and Hayato were connected. And where on earth did Hayato go? Extra story. Things to try in the dark. Gestalt breakdown. Those of you who have a full-length mirror in their house, I want you to try this out. Stand in front of the mirror, look at your reflection, and ask, "Who are you?" No, this doesn't have anything to do with monsters or ghosts or anything like that, so don't worry. Just look at your reflection in the mirror, look straight into your eyes, and ask, "Who are you?" You'll probably feel pretty weird, maybe have a sense of unease, right? I know I would. Well, during World War II, the Nazis conducted a lot of experiments on Jewish people. One of them involved making one of the test subjects stand in front of the mirror, sometimes several times a day, and talk to themselves. They might be told to ask their reflection, "Who are you?" or something similar, and any mental changes during the experiments would be documented. This experiment was one of many ways to try and control someone's personality. About 10 days after the experiment started, the researchers began noticing abnormalities. The subjects began losing the ability to make logical judgments, and they often had trouble telling what was real and what wasn't. By the 10-month mark, the subjects' egos were completely obliterated. Rather than questioning who was in the mirror, they began to question who they were, and eventually they went insane. At the time, my friend and I thought it sounded really interesting. We also thought it was complete bullshit, so we agreed to try it out ourselves. That day, I stood in front of a mirror at my house and asked my reflection, "Who are you?" This was late at night in my bedroom, which made it really eerie. But I was so excited to try it out that I wasn't scared at all. But for some reason, I got sick and threw up. I realised that maybe going through with the experiment might be a bad idea, so I gave up after that. The next day, I told my friend I had been so scared to finish it. So he immediately started teasing me for being a scaredy cat. He laughed a while longer, but after that conversation, we didn't really talk about the Nazi experiment. Around the time that I started to forget we had even read the story, my friend started to miss school more often. When he finally showed up, I asked him what was wrong, but all he would say was, it's nothing. Like, he wasn't even paying attention to me. A few days later, I got a call from him in the middle of the night. As soon as I picked up the phone and put it to my ear, I could tell that he was in a bad place. "Hey, I am me, right? My name is Ida, isn't it?" His voice was wavering, and I think he might have been crying. "Right? Tell me, I'm right." "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked, annoyed. "Of course you're Ida." "Oh, yeah, you're right." He breathed a ragged sigh and continued talking. You remember the mirror thing, right? Well, I kept doing it after you said you weren't doing it anymore. I've done it a lot, actually. I'm not a narcissist or anything, you know. But looking at it and talking to myself in the mirror makes me feel good. Strangely enough, I'll talk to myself, and somehow I feel less and less like I'm me, and it feels good. Whoa. Hold up a second, that doesn't sound safe," I said, and tried to convince him to stop, but he refused to listen. "Don't worry about it, I'll be fine. It's alright, I'll be fine. It's alright. No, I'm fine." He kept repeating virtually the same thing like a broken record. "Hey!" I yelled, and he immediately hung up the phone. I was worried, so I called him back, but nobody picked up the phone. I kept pushing redial, hoping he would answer. Finally, on my 13th try, I heard the phone pick up. "Who are you?" my friend asked before the call disconnected. I tried calling again, but no matter how many times I tried, I could not get through. I hoped to see him at school the next day, but he never came again. Sometime later, his parents got worried because they hadn't heard anything from him. They went to where he was staying, but he had gone completely insane. He couldn't even recognize his own parents. He stared at them blankly, and with a smile on his face, returned to the mirror to talk to his reflection. His parents brought him home, and had been committed to a hospital near where they live. I don't know the exact details, but through the grapevine I heard that he's doing a lot better. But he has no mirrors or reflective metal of any sort in his hospital room. I didn't think you could go crazy in such a short period of time. Regarding the original experiments, they continued to go on for some time. Some subjects were forced to stand between facing mirrors rather than in front of a single mirror. Somehow, the facing mirrors induce psychosis much more quickly. Well, in case you were wondering, the mirror my friend used was a 3-sided mirror. If you have a full-length mirror, please try this experiment. Look straight into your reflection's eyes and ask, "Who are you?" You'll probably feel pretty weird and maybe have a sense of unease. If you are someone who's really easily swayed, you may be more likely to feel the effects and go crazy, so don't continue with the experiment for too long. Recently, when I've washed my face, I've been surprised to find myself staring into someone else's eyes. If I look long and hard, I can see myself. I am me, aren't I?